Hello, this is Eddie Barragon. This is my presentation on insulin and glucagon, one of the main and most well-known endocrine processes, and both of these hormones are responsible for the controlling and maintaining of our blood sugar levels. I'm going to go into more detail of both of them in just a moment, but I chose this topic specifically because I have family members who have suffered from diabetes, and I am able to personally relate to the issues that are presented with the uh, conditions that often are impaired by a lack or necessity of insulin or improper maintenance of glucagon. So, yeah, thank you for listening to my presentation. Hello. So to introduce and start things off with, I'm going to go over some of the key similarities and differences between insulin and glucagon. Now, they're both responsible, as I mentioned before, for the regulating of our blood sugar, but they do have distinct and separate roles from each other. They sort of operate as an inverse of each other. I like to think of them as opposite equal sides of the same coin. Glucagon responds to low blood sugar and operates in the release of stored glucose into the body. I'll go into more detail in that in just a bit. While insulin responds to high blood sugar and prevents accumulation of excess sugar in the body. They work in perfect harmony with each other and maintain the overall process of homeostasis. It's well known the role that insulin plays, and glucagon isn't quite as common knowledge, but it's important to understand both so that they can be properly contrasted and a good understanding of how they both affect our health can be established. So, insulin. Insulin is responsible for the maintenance of regulating our blood sugar levels. It prevents excess sugar from being at high concentrations in our venous blood system, in our overall circulatory system. Now, the disease, as I mentioned before, that results from a long-term excess of high blood sugar is referred to as diabetes. The one that specifically is relevant to my discussion is type 2 diabetes, which develops later in life. Type 1 is more heredity based and genetic, can be passed on generation to generation. There's a certain level of susceptibility that's unavoidable with type 1 diabetes, but it really isn't the same level of actual reversible health condition or preventable health condition that type 2 diabetes is. Diabetes is one of the most common ailments that people in the developed world suffer from in the US, Canada, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, certain areas of Latin America. It's extremely common. Even certain developing nations that are getting a higher standard of living are able to have access to calorie-rich, sugar-dense foods. Not necessarily nutrient-rich or dense, but certainly high-caloric, high-sugar, high-sodium, more westernized diets are increasingly becoming more and more susceptible to developing type 2 diabetes as well as their Western counterparts. And it's really unfortunate. It's a debilitating disease. It can lead to slurred vision, or blurred vision, I mean, and it can lead to highly severe infections. It can lead to cognitive issues down the line. There's some research that suggests that Alzheimer's is related or linked to diabetes. It's a very preventable and very debilitating disease. It just, the main treatment, of course, is insulin shots, which have to be administered on regular basis, and it certainly affects the standard of living and quality of life for individuals who have to suffer through having diabetes. One of the main consequences too of diabetes is the potential of insulin resistance. As in, insulin loses its efficacy over time. It's not able to regulate high levels of blood sugar in the body as effectively. And it's an issue that compounds itself and gets chronically worse over time, with the body being able to maintain homeostasis and regulation of blood sugar levels less and less efficiently as time goes on, especially if it goes untreated. And it's really quite tragic. There are millions of Americans in this country who are probably living with type 2 diabetes to some extent at some stage, even pre-diabetic, unknowingly, and unbeknownst to them, their habits are leading to them developing type 2 diabetes and also potentially insulin resistance. So that's basically the main purpose of insulin, is just to maintain extremely high levels of blood sugar. Okay. So glucagon stimulates the breakdown of glycogen that is stored in the liver. Glycogen is excess glucose that is being stored into the liver. And basically, when glucose forms a surplus, that's how the body stores it semi-permanently until it's needed in the form of glycogen. Now, when glucose levels are too high, large amounts of glucose are taken up by the liver, as I just said, with the influence of insulin. Insulin acts as that catalyst to the storing and putting away of glucose into the form of glycogen. Now, when glucose levels start to fall, glucagon is secreted, and the enzymes that it activates are what causes that depolymerization of glycogen and releases glucose into the bloodstream to basically complement the, at the time, low levels of blood sugar, and then allow the body to take that glucose as a nutrient and energy source. Essentially, the main purpose of glucose is the direct inverse of insulin. It is to respond to and balance out hypoglycemia and or low blood concentrations of glucose. And a lot of people don't realize and don't think critically that we still technically need glucose. The brain needs sugar. The brain uses sugar as its main source of energy and nutrients, or one of its main energy sources anyways. The brain is mostly fat, and fat needs a good amount of glucose to be active and support itself. So, especially as humans, we have quite taxing brains in terms of our calories and our glucose requirements. So we do need sugar. It is an essential nutrient for our bodies, but it's all in moderation. Excess sugar, of course, can have extremely detrimental effects to our health, as I mentioned before in the insulin section of this presentation. In conclusion, both insulin and glucagon are able to help the process of homeostasis and maintaining our bodily health. They're both essential to our overall health and well-being. They have their limits, and they have their complementary actions with each other. Like I said, the best way to think about them is being equal and opposite sides of the same coin. It's important to realize and understand the effects that they have on our body, and to be able to properly analyze and study them and evaluate them so that our overall health can be maintained. Thank you. This has been my presentation on insulin and glucagon. I hope you enjoyed this and learned something or got an appreciation of the subject matter. Thank you. This has been Eddie Baragon.